Okay, very good. So on Wednesday, we did the first four knowledge areas. The first four processes of the scope management knowledge area. So we talked about plan scope management. We went over the collect requirements. Then we talked about defining scope and then creating the WBS. We also discussed which process creates the scope baseline. We talked about that, and we said that the create WBS process creates the scope baseline, but the scope baseline is made up of three parts. You got your scope statement that was created and defined scope, and then you have your WBS and your WBS dictionary that was created as a part of your create WBS process. So now that we have the scope baseline created, now we can begin to validate scope. So validate scope, this is the process where you're going to be formalizing acceptance of your completed work with the customer. And you're going to do this scope validation process throughout your project at the completion of a deliverable or at the completion of a phase. The deliverables are going to be validated progressively as your work is performed. You don't want to wait to the end of your project and then want your customer to validate the deliverables. When you get to the end of the project, it should be very smooth because you've already gone through the validation process with your customers on the interim deliverables as they were being completed. The validate scope process is a part of your monitor and control process group. It is one of the two processes that's going to be in your monitor and control process group. The key benefits of this process is that it increases the probability of your customer accepting your final product, service, or result because they've been accepting interim deliverables all along. And it allows your project team to make incremental adjustments if needed as your project progresses. You don't want to have your project team doing work in a way that's incorrect, that your customer is not going to agree with, right? So when you're doing this validate scope process, periodically as you're completing the scope, you get the customer's feedback, and again, increase your chances of the customer accepting the final product, service, or result. This validate scope process also brings a bit of objectivity to your acceptance process. So when you collected your requirements, you ask the customer about what the acceptance requirements was going to be on that requirement, right? What will this look when this requirement is complete? And then as you were creating your WBS and identifying the deliverables, right, you further discussed it with your client as you were breaking down that scope to make sure you understood what they were looking for in the deliverable. So now by the time you get to this validate scope process, all you're doing is checking for what they already told you. We don't have to have now any discussions about, is this deliverable acceptable or not? If we check all the boxes that you told us in the beginning, then that validate scope process should be very easy, right? But the key here is making sure you're having those conversations with your customer or your stakeholder before you get to this process. You're having those conversations with them during the planning. Now, once you get to this validate scope process, you've gone through several other processes, and I just want to show you how all of these processes fit together. So in your direct and manage project work process, you got the completed deliverables. right? And when those deliverables were completed, then those deliverables went through a quality inspection in your control quality process. We haven't gotten to that yet, but we will get to that. When you have verified the quality of those deliverables, right, then you have completed deliverables that's now going to go to the validate scope. So you see here, before you validate scope, you control quality. You make sure that the deliverables are complete from a quality perspective, or are correct from a quality perspective. Then you go to the validate scope. If the deliverables are acceptable to your customer, now those deliverables are going to be a part of your accepted deliverables that's going to go to your closed project or phase process, right? Now, what happens if the deliverables are not acceptable? That's when you go through the change request process. And so you control the quality, you see that the quality is not correct according to your quality metrics. You submit a change request, evaluate that change request through your perform integrated change control process, and then it goes right back to the execution processes to see, right back to the execution processes for the execution. If, however, they pass the control quality and now you're going to your customer to validate scope, and your customer, so when you are controlling quality, you're making sure the deliverables are correct. And now the customer is going to look and see if the deliverables are complete. If they are not complete, again, a change request is going to be submitted. It's going to be evaluated through your evaluate change control, and it's going to go right back to your executing group for executing. So that kind of circular pattern continues until you get accepted deliverables that are then used to do the final acceptance of your project. So that's how that all works together. What questions do you have about that?
Teresa, when you say acceptable deliverables, is that you saying when they're complete, right? That's the same thing?
No. So
okay.
an accepted deliverable is an output of your validate scope process. And that just says that the customer has accepted that deliverable and has considered that deliverable acceptable. Complete.
Okay, so in this state, they're not doing it. They're just saying, okay, we agree with, we need to do this.
No,
I'm not, okay.
So you have this deliverable. So you built this widget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your widget went through your quality control. So you made sure that the widget was created in compliance with the quality requirements. Now you have a deliverable that is verified. So we call it verified deliverable, right? Mm-hmm. Now that verified deliverable has to go in front of your customer. You put it in front of your customer, and your customer looks at it, and your customer say, oh yes, this is exactly what I was looking for. Now that deliverable is accepted. It's accepted by your customer, right? Now you put that deliverable away or put it on the shelf or wherever you're going to put it until you get to the final deliverable when you get ready to turn over your final product, service, or result to the customer, whether that's operations or some other stakeholder.
Okay. So you would, okay, go ahead, finish.
So you have three outputs here. You have your completed deliverable. Let me get another pen color here and show you. Cyan. I like cyan. Okay. So you have your completed deliverables here, right? And remember, we said that those completed deliverables is going to be an output of your direct and managed project work process. Those, those completed deliverables are then evaluated for correctness, and then it's the same completed deliverables, but now they're being evaluated for correctness through your control quality process.
Okay.
If those pass, now they become accepted deliverables. And then accepted deliverables are going to be evaluated through your validate scope process. If those deliverables are, I'm sorry, I said accepted, they become verified deliverables. If those verified deliverables are, once the deliverables are verified, then they're going to be evaluated through the validate scope, and they become accepted deliverables. Once they become accepted deliverables, now they're well on their way to becoming a part of that final product, service, or result.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it looks like as far as if it goes through after it comes from the direct and management project work, you know, the complete deliverables, and it hits the quality control. If it does not pass quality control, then it's a change request that has to go through, and then it starts all over to the.
Yeah, then it goes right back. There, that's exactly right.
Okay, but if it approves, then it has to go through and it's considered, you have to be verified first.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, yes. That's the part that, okay, so verified, and when they do that, then it's accepted as a accepted deliverable.
When it's verified, then it goes to the customer for acceptance, because the project manager verifies it, and then the customer accepts it.
Okay, the project manager verifies it and the customer accepts it. Okay, cool.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so this slide also talks about that same thing. So because your validate scope and control quality processes seem to be similar, but there is some differences in those two processes. So both of the processes, you're going to be looking at the deliverables, but with your control quality process, you're checking the deliverable for correctness, meaning that it is built in according to the quality metrics or the quality specifications that was given to you by the customer. And then the control quality process is done by the project manager before it gets to the customer. Once the verified deliverables coming out of control quality are complete, then you go to validate scope. And in the validate scope, this is just an acceptance step. This is the step where your customer is going to agree that the work is complete. Now, you typically are going to do your validate scope after your control quality, but you can do both of them at the same time. So you could be in the meeting with your customer and verifying correctness and validating scope at the same time. So although the way that we present them, it looks like they're done one behind the other sequentially, actually they can be done at the same time. Okay, when you think about these verified deliverables, think about interim. So you're verifying these deliverables as you go through your project. Every time you complete a deliverable, you're verifying it. You got a piece of code that's been written, right? And now it's working, and now you can verify it with your scope, with your customer. You have a piece of documentation that's been written. You can verify that with your customer. That way, as the customer is verifying those interim deliverables, when you get to the final deliverable of turning over that end product, service, or result, you won't have difficulty getting it done. Okay? Your ITTOs for your validate scope process starts with your project management plan, which includes your scope management plan, your requirements management plan, and your scope baseline. Your project documents are going to be your requirements documentation and your requirements traceability matrix. And if you remember, I said that the requirements documentation is where the detailed description of your requirements are. And then your requirements traceability matrix is used to trace your requirements back to the project objectives, and then also to trace it through to the deliverable that it's a part of, through the use case or the test case that it's going to be tested by, right? And to the stakeholder that requested it. So now when you go to verify that deliverable, you know exactly the list of requirements that went into that deliverable. Your other project document may be your quality reports, because you wanted to have validate those deliverables according to the quality metrics. So you may have some quality reports that you're going to be reviewing as well. The verified deliverables, those verified deliverables are the ones that came through your control quality process, where you were looking for the correctness of the deliverables. And so once those deliverables are verified, they become an input to your validate scope process. You also have work performance data. Your work performance data could include, where the deliverable was not conforming exactly to the requirements and where that non-conformity lie. It could, the work performance data could identify the number of validation cycles performed in a given time period. So your work performance data also becomes inputs to your validate scope. Your tools and techniques is going to be inspection and decision making. So inspection is a technique, of course, where your customer is going to inspect the deliverable, whether they do that by examining it, whether they do that by measuring something. They could do a product review, they could do a walkthrough, they could do an audit. So like if you're building a house and the customer comes and they do that final walkthrough before you turn the house over to them, that is considered validating the scope, right? And if you're in construction, you know that you do those walkthroughs several times, right? That's validating scope. And so once they have done their inspection, now they have to make a decision. And that's where the decision making comes in. You can use the voting decision making techniques. We talked about the dictatorship, the unanimity, the majority, and the plurality. Remember, we called it the dump voting techniques. Or you can use some type of multi-criteria decision analysis. Your outputs for your validate scope are going to be those accepted deliverables. So the deliverables that your customer or stakeholder decides are acceptable. Then you have your work performance information, and that's the work performance data that you got from your inputs is now going to be analyzed and turned into work performance information. That work performance information then becomes an output. Then you may have some change requests if you did not pass the validation process. The customer might request some changes. And then you have your project document update. So once that deliverable is accepted, then you can go ahead and update your requirements documentation to say that those requirements have been fulfilled. Some additional things you want to know about validate scope is outputs from the planning and from the execution processes is going to be the basis for performing your validation and getting the final acceptance from your customer. The control quality and validate scope processes may be performed simultaneously. I said that. And the validate scope process must still be performed even if the project is terminated. So remember when we were in integration, we talked about the reasons that projects are terminated, and sometimes the project is terminated before it's completed. But if it is terminated before final completion, you still want to validate the deliverables that you did complete as part of that project, just in case that project is picked back up. You already know where you left off and what deliverables had already been accepted. Okay, let's go ahead and test your understanding. We're going to start a poll here. The question is, validate scope defines a process that blanks. Okay, with 70% of the votes in at 1 minute, we're going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. And so 92% of you said that the answer is C, and you would have been correct. The answer is C. The validate scope process formalizes acceptance of your completed project deliverables. So somebody answered A, allows a customer to verify what was built against requirements. So actually the customer is not verifying what's built against requirements. That's what the control quality process does. And that process is done by the project manager. Okay. Stop sharing that. The next process is going to be control scope. And control scope is the process of monitoring the status of the project and the product scope and managing the scope baseline. So now where validate scope was getting verification that the deliverables were complete according to what the stakeholder asked for, control scope is a purely project manager task. Now here, this is where you're going to be controlling whether your team is producing more than is supposed to be produced. This is where you're going to be tracking the completion of the scope against the plan for the scope, right? This is when you're going to be looking to see how well you guys are performing from a work deliverable perspective. The control scope process should be very proactive in nature, right? So it sounds all formal and stuff like that, but really when you are asking your project team members for the status of the work that they've completed, you're doing the control scope, right? You want to make sure that they are doing the work that you guys were, supposed to deliver, that according to the agreement, but only the work that you're supposed to be delivering as a part of the project. And you want to be able to do this in a proactive way. So if things start to get off course, you can get that course corrected really quickly. You have to have before you can start controlling the scope, you have to have a scope baseline. Your scope should have already been reviewed and approved by your stakeholders. The key benefits of this process is that it minimizes the scope creep that can happen. If you're not paying attention, you can start having things done and added to your project, without your knowledge. And now all of a sudden you are, out of time and out of money, and you haven't completed what you're supposed to have completed, but you completed a whole lot of other stuff that was not a part of the scope. If you're going to have a successful project, then controlling that scope is going to be one of the primary things you're going to do. If you're not controlling your scope correctly, then you're going to run into schedule delays and cost overruns. Now, here's some key concepts about that. Change is inevitable. So control scope does not mean keep scope changes out, right? Control scope is you use your change management process through your perform integrated change control process to manage the changes to the scope. So you should be carefully and intentionally managing changes to your scope. When a scope change request comes in, it goes through the perform integrated change control. It's evaluated against its impact to your cost, to your schedule, and your other constraints. Then it is going to be decided upon, yes or no. Is it approved? Is it deferred? Is it disapproved, right? And then once you have gotten it approved, now you got to mix it into your other projects. So there's probably going to be some cost baseline changes. There's probably going to be some schedule baseline changes. But the key is it's control changes to your scope. And your scope is not just changing willy-nilly. Okay? The ITTOs for your control scope process starts with your project management plan. Your scope management plan is going to tell you exactly how you're going to manage changes to the scope. You're going to use your requirements management plan to understand how the requirements are going to be managed. You're going to use your change management plan in order to determine how you're going to process that scope change request through your perform integrated change control process. You may use your configuration management plan if a change is going to, if a change request is going to impact any of those artifacts that's subject to configuration control. Definitely you're going to use your scope baseline, and you're going to be using your cost baseline, your schedule baseline, because there may be some changes to those, and certainly you have to evaluate them. You're going to, another input is going to be your project documents, and your project documents are going to be your requirements documentation, where the detail of your requirements are going to be. You're going to use your requirements traceability matrix. If the change is approved and now you got to gather some more requirements, you're going to update those requirements documentation and your change traceability, your requirements traceability matrix. You may have some work performance data that's going to tell you the number of changes that's been approved, the number of changes that were rejected, the number of changes that were referred. And there may also be some organizational process assets or some templates that you can use in order to manage your scope processes. The tools and technique is going to be data analysis. So as soon as that scope change comes in, you're going to be analyzing that scope change against the impact to the other areas of your project. You may do some variance analysis to see if we do it this way, it's going to have that impact. If we do it that way, it's going to have that impact. You may also do some trend analysis to understand how much change, scope change you're having over time. Because if you're having a lot of scope change, then that it's going to point to a bigger problem that perhaps you didn't get all of the requirements, right? You're also going to want to understand the cause and the reasons for the scope changes. So all of that is done through your data analysis. Your outputs are going to be work performance information. So that work performance data analyzed becomes your work performance information. Your change request is going to be an output. And then if those change requests are approved or deferred or whatever, then you have your project management plan updates and your project document updates. Additional things you want to know about this control scope process is that as far as the exam is concerned, you want to assume that the project manager is controlling scope by frequently measuring work performance data against the scope baseline. And what does that mean? That means you have your scope baseline, and when your team members are coming in with their statuses, you're comparing the status against your scope baseline. If this document was supposed to be completed yesterday, or the document was supposed to be completed today, whatever, whenever that document is complete, now you know you have a completed deliverable on your scope baseline. PMI says that the project manager is responsible to control unnecessary changes to the scope. That's why you do that trend analysis, because you want to see where those changes are coming from, right? You want to also make sure that you are addressing any root causes or underlying conditions that may be causing you to have excessive change on your project. Project manager's job is not just to process the stakeholders' changes. Your job is to make sure that those changes are aligned to your original project objective and the value that you're supposed to bring to the business from that. Of course, if the changes are legitimate changes, perhaps you forgot some scope, maybe some scope didn't get added in for whatever reason, then those are legitimate changes. But if the stakeholders are just, you know, going out there in the ether and pulling ideas from wherever they pull those ideas, if it's not in alignment with your project objectives, then you must reject those changes. Okay, let's go ahead and do another test your understanding. What did I do? What the heck? When performing the control scope process, which of the following statements is correct? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll and share the results. And the correct answer, 42% of you said it was D, and that is the correct answer. So when you're performing the control scope process, the control scope process is performed in concert with the other control processes. So it's not performed in isolation, in the silo. You're controlling all of your control processes at the same time. 25% of you said that it was A, control scope validates the deliver scope of the project. And remember that the validate scope process validates. Control scope verifies, validate scope validates. No, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Control quality verifies, validate scope validates. So your control scope is about controlling the deliverables of your project and making sure that they are being created according to plan. It's not about whether those deliverables are correct or whether those deliverables are going to be accepted by your customer or not. That's why you have those three processes in there. You have the control quality, which verifies that the deliverables are correct. Then you have the control scope, the validate scope, which verifies, the customer verifies that the deliverables are complete. And then you have the control scope, which has nothing to do with those deliverables. It has to do with whether you are completing the deliverables of your project or not, and making sure you're not doing more than what you agreed to in the project. So you got those three processes. And I gave you an exercise so that you guys can practice that, because those three processes they're like so closely meshed together that many people get them mixed up, right? So I gave you an exercise so that you can identify whether it's a control scope, a validate scope, or control quality activity. Okay, 25% of you said that it was B. The work performance measurements produced are part of the PMIS. That is correct. If you have a project management information system, your work performance measurements are going to be included in that PMIS, but it doesn't answer the question. So you have to be careful that sometimes your answer choices may be a correct statement, but they don't answer your question. And then 8% said C, the inspection process is a key tool and technique used in control scope. No, actually inspection is for validate scope. Inspection is for validate scope. Remember, with this control scope, we're not looking at the individual deliverables to see if they're correct or complete or not. With the control scope, we're just making sure that we are controlling our scope, not getting past the boundaries of what we set for the project. Okay, questions on that? Okay.
Slow down. That's what I told myself once I actually saw the results for the previous question. I have a habit of answering the question before I actually even read through the question. So I'm telling myself to slow down.
Yeah. So, tomorrow we'll have our Saturday study clinic, and we will be doing a drill, a question drill. And one of the reasons why I do that study clinic is because I want you to see those test-taking habits that you have that might be defeating you, right? And so that'll be a good thing. But also, when you are doing your simulated exams, you also begin to uncover those test-taking habits. And this test is not a test of speed per se. You do want to increase your speed in answering the questions, but actually you could just put in a strategy for how you're going to answer your questions, and don't worry about the speed so much as making sure that you're getting through the entire test. But it's not a speed reading contest, right? And if you're going to answer the questions correctly, you're going to have to make sure that you are reading the question in its entirety, and you are reading those answer choices in their entirety, because one word can switch the meaning, right? And cause that question, that answer choice, to not be the right one or the wrong one. Okay? So let's go ahead and summarize the steps in scope management. So first, we're going to develop a plan scope management. We're going to develop a plan on how we're going to collect our requirements, how we're going to define our scope, how we're going to validate our scope, how we're going to control it. Then we go and we start to collect those requirements. So we determine what the requirements are. We make sure that those requirements are aligned with our project objectives that's defined in our project charter. And then we take our cute little box and we put our boundaries around the requirements that's going to make it into scope, and the requirements that's going to be out of scope. Then we create a scope statement saying that this is what's in and this is what's out. Once we create that scope statement, then we go ahead and create the work breakdown structure, which all the deliverables that's going to be completed in order to produce that scope. Each of those, and then we break it down to the work package level. Once we get it to the work package level, then we define that work package in the work breakdown structure dictionary. I showed you an example of what that might look like. It might be who's assigned to it, when it's assigned, when it's due, how much it's supposed to cost. And you are, as you are refining that work package more and more throughout the other processes, you're constantly updating that WBS dictionary with that information. Then you're going to validate, once the deliverables are completed, you want to validate them with your customer, and then you want to make sure that you are measuring the performance of your scope. Are you completing the project within the time and the budget that you said you're going to complete it in, right? So that's what that measuring that performance is about. And are you keeping the boundaries of your project tight so that you don't have unnecessary or unapproved changes to your scope? Project scope should be the primary focus of your project. So the whole purpose of the project is delivering that scope and only that scope. And remember, scope is going to be the sum of the product, services, or results that's going to be provided by the project. So the sum of your deliverables is going to be your scope. And that's all of the work that's going to be done for your project, but only the work that's going to be done for your project. And when you talk about scope with your customers or with your stakeholders, you should be talking about that work in terms of the scope that you're delivering. The scope management plan defines how you're going to define, develop, and verify that scope. PMI says that your project is going to be a success if you deliver exactly what has been agreed upon and documented, and only what has been agreed upon. So PMI really frowns upon scope creep. Okay, that concludes our lecture on scope management. What questions do you have?
How do you deal with scope PTSD?
Go to the doctor and get some Xanax.
This is literally what I was dealing with today. So very on point.
Other questions?
Not to put you on the spot, Patrick, but can you, like, when you said that you were dealing with it, could you kind of give like a high level of what you were experiencing, just to get a live example?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a project that made it past the goalkeeper, and there was not a great handoff from the creation of the statement of work, which a lot of people use in our organization as kind of a project management plan. Terrible idea. So basically, we several departments within my company were committed to work without accepting it, without asking questions, without doing discovery, without creating a scope baseline. So all of a sudden, there's this open-ended task to get done, and 4 or 5 departments have no clue what they're supposed to be doing. So I'm doing a project kickoff for something that should have been a separate project. Longer story there. And I'm doing a project kickoff essentially, and we're just doing discovery like 2 days before we're supposed to, deliver a work package. So that's, and as you're going through it, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we expected you guys to do this, and we expected you to do this, and we expected you to do this. So those kinds of things. So as you're going through it, you're like, okay, well, we can't accept that because we're going to have to talk about that's probably a change request, or we can accept that. However, here's the risk. Here's the challenge with it. here's the problem, here's the impact to schedule, to quality, to, you know, all of those things. So that's what I was dealing with today, without getting into
what
too many
happened that
details.
you guys didn't validate the scope when the requirements were first collected?
That's
Oh, that's so cute. That's a great question.
No, I'm just saying because normally that's like the process.
No.
You want me to do this, and I say, yes, I can do this. This is what you asked me to do. Are we on the same page? You say, yes, we're on the same page. Okay, let me get busy doing it. What happened to that?
Because by the time PMO was brought into it, by the time our technical services were brought into it, someone had already signed a contract. They'd already signed our company up for the responsibility of something.
Yes.
Whatever that was.
I've
TBD.
experienced that a lot as a consultant. You experience that a lot, right? But even after the contract is signed, you still go through a discovery period, right? You do your due diligence, right? And you say, this can be done in this period. This cannot be done in this period, right? And then it's up to the client partner or the client representative or whatever to negotiate that.
Yeah, so we went through that, sort of. I got brought in the week before they wanted to do a pilot of a technical deployment, right? So,
wait,
so time was limited, right?
What happened to me? When I got hired by Accenture, I was immediately put on the e-support project, and the e-support project was supposed to be that was our first venture into a customer support portal where the customers can go out and get self-support, right? This was way back when, before e-support was popular. I came in and my job was to deploy this e-support product to these 100,000 employees, right? The e-support product had been built on a server that was sitting under the desk of one of the developers. And I was like, this is not ready for deployment. They're like, but we spent all of this money. They went on the road show. They had convinced all of the partners that this was great and it was beautiful. And it was a really hard fight for me because I was in front of all of those partners representing all of those regions. And I'm like, this is not ready for prime time. We got to put it in a data center somewhere. We got to make sure we got correct network connectivity to the various countries. There's a whole lot of work that needs to be done before we can deploy this. I got in trouble. That's when they told the partner to send me to Siberia.
Actually, a few weeks ago, the same thing happened, right? With the same project. I went in and there's a couple people who made the commitment who are desperate to not eat crow in front of the client.
Yes.
Because they made promises, their mouths wrote checks that their bodies can't cash. And I had to go in and just say, I'm not going in to fail. The worst thing you can do right now is keep making promises that we will not be able to keep up and you will lose future contracts.
Yeah.
So go in, eat crow. You're going to eat crow. Put some salt on it, some pepper, do whatever you got to do, some, Zatarain that up, whatever, but go eat it in front of them because we're not here to fail. I didn't get called in because this project is going great.
Right.
I got called in because it's going terrible and people know that there's problems. So you're just, and that's part of my maturation as a project manager,
Yes, so, good for you, Patrick. Good for you. Good for you, because I remember at the beginning of the training last time, you would have went for that. You would have went for that, and you've been like, oh, let me figure out how to get this thing deployed in 2 days, and it was not deployable. Yeah. So
exactly.
Asia, that's what he means by scope PTSD. You get into those situations where they bring you in and they say they're ready to deploy or they're ready to hand it over to the client for scope validation. You're like, wait a minute, this thing is not even done yet.
Gotcha. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah. Okay.
I will say something else, Teresa.
Yeah.
You said something earlier in class about the exams and your pace.
Yes.
And I just wanted to reemphasize that because I've taken 2 practice exams so far, and they're 4 hours long. I finished in like 3 hours something, and I took a casual pace. It pays. And those simple little one-word differences,
Yes.
huge, huge.
Yes.
So those practice exams, when Teresa tells you take them, do it. They make a huge difference.
They totally make a huge difference. And the key, you know, what I tell people, I used to give people this strategy, and I'm gonna tell it to you, and then I'm gonna tell you how to alter it. But when you first go and sit down for the exam, you go through all of the questions that you know. So you read the question, you read the answer choice, you're like, oh yeah, I know this. You go ahead and you answer it and go to the next question. If your first 5 questions you don't know, don't panic. Just click them, just move through them real fast, quick, 30 seconds. Read the question, read the answer choices. You don't know the answer, move on, right? Then, and do that for all 200 questions. Sometimes a question is going to come up in the future that helps you answer one of those questions that you didn't know the answer to beginning, right? But you got to get through all 200. Then go back and take your time and read those more difficult questions, right? And then, so when you're going through it, make sure you mark them so you'll know that you need to go back and review them, right? I would do that, and I would try to get through all 200 again like that. Leaving the brain busters, and the ones I call the brain busters is when you read it and you have no clue what they're talking about. And even after going through all of the questions, you still have no clue what they're talking about. Leave it. You're not expected to have 100% of the answers. Just leave it and say, these people crazy. I don't know where this crazy question came from, but I have no idea what they're talking about. Leave it. Do not. I call them brain busters because people keep knocking their head against the computer screen trying to figure the question out, and it's not figure outable, right? Leave it and go on and answer those questions that you do know. But take your time, read the answer choice, read the question stem, and read the answer choices, because again, one word can change the whole meaning of everything. Okay, what other questions do you have?
I still have issues consistently answering product scope and project scope. It's like I believe I get the terminology, but it's just the recognition, especially when it comes to certain questions. Mm-hmm. And it's not clicking consistently or quickly enough for me. And I've been reading additional resources or examples, especially from my PMBOK and my other PMP textbooks, to try to figure out what am I missing.
So product scope is going to tell you the what. This is what we want you to deliver. Project scope is going to tell you the how. This is how we want you to deliver it. So we want you to create a risk management plan. That is a how, right? We want you to give us silver-plated furniture. That is a what. And that's exactly, Felipe, how you have to look at it when you're looking at the statement. Just, you know, I'm out of context, because most of the statements is going to be out of context. You just look at that statement and say, are they telling me what they want the product to be, or are they telling me how to deliver the project? If they tell me, like, for instance, you have to get in a construction project and you have to get all of these city approvals or whatever like that. If they say you have to get must-have city approvals, that's not telling me what I'm delivering. That's telling me how I'm delivering it. If it says must meet all quality requirements, that's not saying what I'm delivering. That's saying how I should deliver it. But if it says must have purple steps, that's a product. That's what I'm delivering. If it says must have well, what was the other one? PC and Mac compatibility, that's telling me a what. is what the product should be, do, or deliver. I hope that helps you. Did you do the homework assignment?
Actually, I did it 5 minutes after I think our last course. So
Did I give you the answers?
no, I just downloaded the information to you like 30 minutes ago.
Okay, so I will provide you with the answers and check your answers against what you did. And then if you have any difficulties in or disagree with the answers that I've given you, make sure you keep track of those questions and bring them back to class on Monday, or either wait until the fourth Saturday when I go over homework assignment that people have been having difficulty with.
Yeah, there's one thing about it. I'm not going to disagree with your teaching approach. Is 100% A1, so it's all good.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, other questions about the scope?
I still have questions, but it's less about the lesson today, but more so about the operations, not in terms of payment. So I'll talk to you offline after class or something.
Okay.
All right.
Teresa, I have a question not about scope, but just, are we meeting tomorrow morning?
Yes, so tomorrow is the Saturday study clinic that I mentioned, where we're going to be doing those question drills. And so the way that it works is I give you 10 questions and it's timed. I think I gave you like 90 seconds for each question. And as soon as 90 seconds is up, that question moves to the next question. And then we go and review your answers, and I review the questions that you guys have difficulties with. And we also do some how to answer test question strategies. So that's the important thing. Like, I can teach you this information all I want, and you can get it and you can know the information, but if you don't know how to answer test questions correctly, you still won't pass the exam. So the study clinic is about teaching you how to answer the questions correctly and giving you an environment where you are you're timed on the questions, and the questions are moving really rapidly. But here's the kicker, you got to sign up for it. So I think I sent you guys the email with the registration link so you can sign up. Did I not?
That was my next question. I mean, you probably have, maybe it got mixed up with the rest of the
I'm sorry, y'all
emails from
probably
you.
get 500 email from me, don't y'all? I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I want to make sure, do you remember when you sent it or when it went out? And then I could kind of probably search like that, because I know I didn't sign up for it, but I want to make sure I'm in there.
Those emails been going out all week. But I can give you the link to the, let me just paste it in the chat right fast, the link to register.
Okay, thank you.
Because you guys get it worse, because I'll be sending you emails about this class and you'll be getting emails about the other stuff that's going on. So I know sometimes you have a tendency to ignore my emails. My feelings are not hurt.
It looks like you sent it out on Tuesday, just FYI.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you got it then.
I did, but like you said, it just got mixed up with the other emails.
I know. It don't hurt my feelings. I understand. I do. Most of the time, though, if it's something that you guys need to know, I just put it in the group chat. What the heck is going on here?
Can you resend the email to sign up for your course tomorrow?
Or just drop it in the chat, please.
Oh, that one, that could work as well.
Yeah, I am about to drop it in the chat. My computer is going slow because you know I'm on mobile stuff. I'm not on
Understood.
my network. So give me, bear with me. What's this link?
I think Courtney dropped it.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute.
Is that the right one, Courtney?
Hold on. Zoom is.
What computers? Yeah, that's the right one. So Courtney put the link in the chat box for anybody that wants to register for the study clinic tomorrow. Thank you, Courtney, because my computer still ain't bringing it up. It's still spinning.
Thank you, Courtney. It's already signed up.
Mm-hmm. So that
Zoom
will
just crashed for me, so you're
say
not
that
dealing
again.
with technical issues tonight.
I
I
know.
was
What's
saying
up
Zoom
with
just
that?
crashed and reloaded for me, so you're not alone.
Yeah. Good thing I had the mobile backup, or you guys wouldn't even be hearing from me right about now. Okay. What other questions do you have?
So is there any pre-work for the clinic tomorrow? Or we're just bringing the questions that we are answering in class?
No, so the clinic tomorrow, I'm going to be providing you with the questions. So we'll do a rapid fire drill of typical questions that you're going to encounter on the exam. And I got to, warn you ahead of time, like I try to find the most difficult questions that I can find. So it's not going to be easy, but it is meant to strengthen your test taking muscle. And that's what this particular clinic is not about what you know. It's about if you're able to answer these questions or not, using test taking strategies, right?
Teresa,
It's going to be some stuff you don't know, but are you going to panic because you don't know it, or are you going to use good test taking strategies and try to figure it out? Yes, Sabrina.
Can you
She's not lying
confirm
about
the
the
time? Can you confirm the time for tomorrow?
10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
so with that being, oh, sorry.
Let me see if
was-
Jennifer got it. Did that answer your question, Jennifer?
Yes.
Very good. Asia?
To piggyback off of Jennifer, so I mean, in this case, when you say the questions, it could be about anything, random. Okay, I just wanted to know. I didn't know if you picked it from like what we covered so far, or are you just pulling it from? Okay, perfect.
This study clinic is open to the public, so it's you guys, it's past students, it's future students, it's anybody that wants to come. But the whole purpose is to teach you test taking strategy. I want these questions to dupe you, because I want you to learn not to panic when you see hard questions and break that question down. And that's what we do at the end. Once you go through once you go through the drill, then we go and we break those questions down so that you can learn how to break questions down that you may not know the answer to.
Okay.
Cool, thank you.
She's not lying about them being hard. Trust me.
I know, trust me too.
But you learn how to break questions down, and that's the important point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And the one thing that I will say, like for me, I thought I really didn't know the material because the questions are hard. It's not about knowing the material. It's about thinking your way through the questions.
Exactly.
The test is a game, for me at least. So
it totally is a game, and that's the approach that I want you guys to take. Is not a testing to your knowledge of project management. That's not what it's about. It's not about if you know the information. That's not what it's about. It's about, are you able to decipher the correct question based on good test taking etiquette and test taking strategies? And if you are not, if you are a non-reader, so some people don't read, they skim, you're not going to do well on this test. If you don't know, like all of the questions are going to be asking you about a specific knowledge area and a specific process group. If you don't know those knowledge areas and groups, you're not going to be able to answer that question, right? Correctly. So this is about teaching you how to approach those hard questions and helping you to identify, okay, what knowledge area is this? What process group is this? So does this answer make sense in light of this question asking me about this knowledge area, right? So they'll ask you about something in planning and give you some execution answers. Does those execution answers make sense in light of this planning question? No, let's eliminate those right away. So that's what tomorrow is going to be about. I hope all of you guys can join us. I do not record them, so it's not like, oh, I'll go back and look at it later. Either you're there or you're not. You're there or you're not. Yeah.
Teresa,
So,
can I ask another question before we go?
sure.
I don't know if you even covered this or not, but the dump. You know, I'm always thinking about what I need to be making sure that I write down. Haven't even gone through a 4-hour test yet. So
Yes.
do you have any recommendations? I know it's tailored to everyone. Everyone's going to have a different dump sheet, but generally, what you think should be on a dump sheet that will help when we get ready to take the exam?
I will provide you with the sample dump sheet at the end of the course.
Okay.
Meanwhile, during the course, I'm going to tell you, put this on your data dump. Put this on your data dump. And when I get to something that should be on your data dump, because like you said, everybody is individual, and you might have some stuff on your data dump that not everybody else doesn't have because it confuses you in some kind of way, right? But the stuff that should be on your data dump, generally, when we get to it, I'm going to say, put this on your data dump.
Very good.
Yeah, mostly it's going to be the formulas. When we start to get to the math stuff, it's going to be those formulas. If you recall, when we did the net present value, I said this is the one you want to have for your data dump. So when I get to those things, and I tell you to put this on your data dump. But at the end of the course, I give you a comprehensive data dump. Compliments of Danielle. So last year, Danielle and I, she got a one-on-one with me one weekend, and we just sat down and we did her data dump. And she shared it with the class last time. I thought it was a really, really good data dump. And so I'll be sharing that with you guys at the end of this course. Also, in your exercise checklist, I put in there key places where you should be in your study guide. Within your study guide is going to be items that should be in your data dump. So I hope you guys, everybody have downloaded and printed out that study guide and been filling it in, because that's a really, really good study aid too. Yeah, that's a really, really good study aid too. And then so that checklist tells you which questions should be answered by now. I kind of dated them out for you.
Okay.
Have everybody gotten the checklist? Is it helpful, the checklist?
Yes.
Yes, very good. Okay. All righty. Any other questions? Yasmin, you had a question?
Oh, no, I was just saying yes.
Oh, okay, very good. Any other questions? Okay, guys, well, that concludes our live lecture for tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you for tonight. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow during the study clinic. We should have a lot of fun. Study clinics are fun, guys. So we should have a lot of fun tomorrow. Okay?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and attention. We'll talk to you later.
Hold up,
Have
hold
a good
up.
night, guys.
Good night.
I'm going to reach out to you, Philippe.
I got you.